does help us powerless. Now, that word power is an interesting word. It carries notions of strength as well as agency, control, potential, and energy. So, when we speak of solar power, there's a lot being said between those lines. In 2014, my husband Bruce and I were lucky, blessed, and really privileged to purchase a geothermically, what is that word? Geothermally heated home on an extraordinary piece of property along the Kalamazoo River just south of Holland. My quiet, environmentally sensitive, scientist, chemist, wizard of a husband had a plan. First, we put up a pole barn. Shortly after, we contracted Helios to install 33 solar panels on the south roof of the barn. 2 years later, we installed an additional 20 solar panels as a ground-mounted array. When our solar panels were installed, Helios managed connecting them to consumers' power so that we could participate in the net metering program. Net metering, now called the New Distributed Generation Program, means that the energy we generate decreases our need to buy electricity from consumers' power, and we receive a credit for the extra energy we produce. That's pretty cool. Does this work for us? Well, to be clear, it's not all black and white. I mentioned earlier that our home is geothermally heated. It's important to understand and remember that our utility, our only utility, is electric. Now we pay less in a year than we used to pay in a month for all of our utilities. And given our projected electric credit, we've decided to take the next step to reducing our carbon footprint and our fuel costs. We're going to install a charger in our garage, and hopefully this summer we'll be driving on sunshine. Driving on sunshine. Do, do, do. Bottom line, investing in solar power is empowering. It's good for our planet. It's good for our budget, good for my peace of mind, and best of all, it's good for Eddie. Thank you.
I'm letting the credits run here. So
Okay. Well, I wonder if Mr. Wonderful Husband could come online for a minute. And Bruce, you've installed solar at your home, and wonder if you could share something with folks about what your thinking was and what the experience has been like.
Okay, well, as Linda pointed out, we moved to this land, well, it'll be 8 years ago in August. And we ended up we had a pole barn put up and some land cleared because I wanted to have a garden. And it was almost an afterthought, but I told them to situate the barn so that the long part of the roof was facing south, because I thought solar panels might get cheap enough. And so they did that, and lo and behold, prices they were already coming down, and they came down even more. And I started looking around, and it was obvious that things weren't going to get any better environmental wise. So it started to look feasible financially to put in some solar panels. And I didn't really expect to do as many at once, but I talked to Connor, and he presented a couple of different possibilities, because I didn't have to take up the whole roof area. You can see on some of the pictures that it pretty much does. I think we ended up stuffing as many panels up there as we could. And it just seemed to make sense to do it all at once because, as he pointed out, there is an economy of scale. I could have put up one or two, but then he would have had to repeated a bunch of stuff in order to get more if it looked good. So ended up doing that. And I've got to say, that morning, as things had it, I had to take Linda to Grand Rapids for knee surgery. And so Connor and his people came that morning and I had to leave. And I came back, I didn't know what to find, but I don't think there was any litter anywhere. They did an exceptional job of putting them up and cleaning up after themselves. I've never seen a contractor do, I don't think, as well as they did. So that was impressive for one thing. But that first year or so, I kind of watched things and, well, the winter isn't great. There's snow on the panels some of the time, and we have more shading issues in the winter. And the panels just, the sun is not as strong or up as long in the winter, so we don't generate nearly as much electricity. But we did do very well over the course of a year, and I think probably got about 60% of our energy taken care of. And based on the amount of money that I put into the panels, the money that we got out as far as electricity costs was about 6% would amount to about 6% counting the rebate that we got. So I thought that was pretty good. I've made a lot worse investments, unfortunately. And I talked with Connor about putting in enough to get us to 100% solar. And so we ended up about a year and a half later putting in the ground array, which has worked very well. And we've actually generated a slight surplus. Well, it was last year, and we'll probably have a slight surplus this year as well. This March will be the last month of this winter where we will possibly be using more energy than we generate because the sun's getting stronger. We're getting a lot more solar these days, even though some days it doesn't seem like it. So I'm happy with it. I'm happy with Connor. I thought he is a salesman, but he's very honest and very meticulous. And I've been very pleased with it. So that's pretty much where we are at this point. Any questions? Or I don't know how you want to do this, Peter.
Let's see if we can hold the questions to the end.
Okay.
Because we have Jane and Larry Dickey here also, who have also installed solar. And I'd like to hear what their thinking was, why they did that sort of thing, and what the experience was like for them.
Hey, well, I'm gonna talk first and we'll see. Can you hear me okay? Peter,
I can.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So I was looking back through my journals to see when we first put this in, and I found a quote by Wendell Berry of a poem that talked about where you find hope, and you find hope in the place that you live in, and you do the best for your place at the same time you're thinking about other people in their places, and you care for your place the best you can, and you support and pray for people in other places who are trying to keep up their places. And that was part of the thought as we moved to solar. I found another quote from Richard Rohr that was in my journal back from when we were deciding that maybe solar was a good thing. And I want to read it. And it comes from a Christian perspective. Not everybody is a Christian, that doesn't matter. But I think that it's an interesting one. He says, Christianity is a lifestyle, a way of being in the world that is simple, nonviolent, shared, and loving. However, we made it into an established religion and all that goes with it. and avoided the lifestyle change itself. One could be warlike, greedy, racist, selfish, and vain in most of Christian history and still believe that Jesus is one's personal Lord and Savior. The world has no time for such silliness anymore. The suffering of the earth is too great. And as I think about that, I thought about not only what we decided to do at the time in terms of our own place and trying to put in solar to cover our energy needs and try to reduce our carbon footprint. But more recently, I've been supported and rationalizing how important it was to put in solar. I have been struck by the ways in which we have the control over fossil fuels is held by despots from Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, Russia. And you remember the war in Iraq when we said it was for oil? I've been thinking about not just the climate change, but that immediately people are dying and being killed over such things. So I think that putting in solar is helping to get us off of our addiction to fossil fuels, which will, I think, reduce our dependence on places where war is happening over this very problem. During the recent election in 2020, I asked a group of 18 to 19-year-olds, which I used to teach when I taught at Hope, what was the most urgent issue? And without a doubt, they all spoke up and said climate change. Young people are very aware of our decisions and what we do in terms of their lives and their children's lives. So I think of my own children and grandchildren and yours. And I think the last thing I think about that I think is very interesting is that at the time we purchased our solar panels and Helios and Connor speak very positively about that company and the wonderful care they took for us and of us, is that we had some money now. So we pay now and our future means very much lower electric bills. During the winter, we do have some electric costs and electric bills because our solar doesn't cover 100% for the whole year. But it covers everything from about April through September. And we know that electric bills are increasing and they're continuing to increase, but we've basically paid for our electric with our solar installations. So those are some of the things I think about, the things I've thought about more recently. And I'll see whether Larry wants to add anything to the things I've said.
Well, to add on to what Bruce said and Linda in her video, we're also driving on electricity. We have a Chevy Volt, and so it's a hybrid, but most of the time we're driving on a battery. And I also echo what Bruce said about Helios Solar. When we were beginning to look into it, we were perusing the internet for contractors in Michigan, practically everywhere, anywhere, and made some calls and people were helpful with information. But when we called Helios, they came right out, sat with us at our table and answered every question we had and gave us a rough proposal at the beginning. And we were so impressed with that we ended up deciding to go with them. The other practical thing I would mention is that not long after we had the panels installed, and that was the first panel, the picture you're seeing at the top of the screen there is our second array. But after the first one was installed, a little while later, we got a call from Connor that said, you're not generating any electricity. And it turned out that I had inadvertently turned off the circuit breaker for that panel. And we were very grateful that somebody was looking out for us because we weren't particularly monitoring it, but Connor was. And so we were grateful for that. And in general, we've been very happy with the whole process, the installation and the production.
And follow up, I mean, when the installing consumers, energy contacted us directly for things. I had no idea what they were asking for. I just sent it right off to Connor and Brandon, and they immediately took care of things for us and followed up even when consumers was being kind of, I would say, negligent and not following up and doing what it needed to do for us. But Brandon and Connor followed up with it very, very well. So yeah, so we've been very happy.
And maybe Connor will talk about this, but our first array, they installed by using a gigantic hole digger and embedding the support structure in cement. And it took several days to complete that and all kind of excavating equipment. And by the time the second one came around last year, they had this really nifty pile driver and the whole thing was set up and ready to go in one day.
One day.
This is probably a good segue to have Connor Field from Helios come on.
Peter,
thank you.
Could you make us see Connor? I'm only seeing the slide. I can't see anybody else. Can you get rid of this slide here so we can see him?
Let's do two things. Connor's got a couple slides he wants to show, and then Ken could maybe take those down.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for being here, and thank you very much to Larry and Jane and Bruce for the kind words. That definitely means a lot to me to hear, the positive feedback from our work. We try to do the best job that we can with every installation that we work on, and it's really great to hear that carries through, and there's some appreciation for that. So in the solar industry, I would say that Helios is positioned in something of a unique location in that we are a family-owned, relatively small local company, and that we founded the company based on engineering and economics principles. My background's in electrical engineering. My partner in the business is also my father, Sam. He has a legal and financial background. And so what we attempted to do was to bring cost-effective, economical, well-designed solar energy to the state of Michigan when we started the company. And that really sort of drove a lot of the decisions we made early in the process. One of those is that through the process of forming Helios, I was actually still in the educational phase of my life at that point. So I decided in that phase to add a master's degree in electrical engineering, focusing in solid state electronics, specifically solar cells, to that educational path, so that I would have the educational background to be able to speak with authority on all things solar for the foreseeable future, just understanding that technology in the best possible way. So that really lent itself in the early years of the business to doing some larger commercial and utility type projects. But because of the way that the regulation in the state of Michigan has evolved, the residential market has really become where the best economics for solar currently reside. The reason for that is that the rate that you're compensated for solar for commercial and industrial has tended to go down, while the residential rate has stayed to be quite attractive. And so that's really led to Helios becoming focused on residential solar installation work. In order to better serve that market, we also brought on Brandon Flood, who's on this call. He's our principal residential salesperson. And keeping in the spirit of this being a family operation, he's also my wife's younger brother. So he's my brother-in-law. Very proud of the work that he's done. He also has done extensive training in solar photovoltaics. He carries from an organization called NABCEP, which is the National Board of Certified Energy Practitioners, which is considered to be the gold standard for renewable energy education. He has a technical sales certification from them. And we say that if he can't answer your questions about a solar installation, I'd be surprised. He's very, very knowledgeable. And I also think he's just, a great guy to work with all around. So the folks on this call, many of you, if you do decide to pursue a quote from us, we'll be working with Brandon likely. With me serving as a backstop for very complicated technical questions or, other concerns as they may arise. You want to jump to that next slide there? So another thing that differentiates Helios in our model is that we, as a contracting company, work on a single point of contact model. I think that that's very important because many times when you're hiring a contractor, especially to work on your home, if you call, say, a call center or click on an ad, you may talk to one person and then your file will get passed to another person and information will be lost. You won't necessarily know who you're talking to. It may be a different salesperson who comes out. It may be a different person who prepares the contract. We really seek to have one person who, from the time you first make contact with us until the completion of your project, you will have one person whose phone number that you have that you can reach out to, contact, and make sure that you know all the details of what's going to be going on your property. So I think that that's a very important differentiating part of our company. It's a more difficult model to implement because it requires having very intelligent, very versatile people, and also we limit to some extent the work that we do to what we can handle while maintaining that very, very high quality product. For that reason, Helios does not currently do any paid advertising. All of the work that comes to us is word of mouth. And through that, we've actually been able to grow by approximately 50% a year for each of the past 5 to 6 years, just through that word of mouth type growth and spreading the word. And I think that a way to embody numerically where that focus comes is that if you were to Google our company, so on Google, we have 41 of 41 reviews are 5 stars with many positive comments from folks that, I mean, they really do, the things that people say about the work that we do really is very satisfying for us, that we try to do the best possible job that we can. And when that's recognized, it really is great. It feels as if it makes the project overall a success. Because in addition to being, our business, we're delivering a product that allows our customers to accomplish their economic as well as climate-based goals. And to have them be very satisfied with the end result is really just, it's a win for everybody in all regards. I would mention that, so we, being an engineering focused company, we can work with all different types of solar installations. Your typical solar installation, that you see in that upper left-hand picture there on this slide, that's very sort of bread and butter shingle roof mount type installation. There are many contractors who can do that, but we also pride ourselves in being able to work on other types of projects like that one in the lower right corner there, which is a low sloped roof on the coast of Lake Michigan. This was a new build, very complicated overall project because it had to be built in a way that didn't add additional loading onto the structure because the house is built in a sand dune. And so it had to be designed in such a way that it worked with the engineering of the overall house. So very, very complicated project. And I feel as if we're uniquely suited for that type of work. And then also our two previous customers who presented previously mentioned we do have the capacity to do ground mounted arrays as well. As Larry mentioned, we're using the state-of-the-art technology for that, which is a driven pile foundation system. One thing that is really great about that driven pile foundation system, in addition to being a very clean, quick installation, it also makes it so that by adding solar to the property as a ground mount, you're not doing anything to potentially permanently impact the landscape upon which the solar is being added. Because when you reach the end of life for that equipment, just as those posts were driven into the ground, they can be vibrated right back out of the ground, leaving no concrete or other spoil in the landscape. And that's something that I really like about that particular setup. And it has actually allowed us to do solar projects on what would otherwise be, ecologically reserved land. We've done projects on development restricted land because with that driven pile foundation system, there's no permanent effect on the landscape. And I think that that's really a great way to do ground mounted solar because it has as light a possible environmental footprint as possible while getting the maximum benefit of adding that solar energy to that location. So that's a little bit about Helios. I don't want to take up too much time. I mean, I can talk all day about projects we've done and expound upon how I think what we do is a positive force in this world. But I think I'll turn things back over, let it move along, and hopefully be able to answer any questions that folks may have.
Okay, thank you, Connor. I'm going to turn the program over now to Don Triesenberg, who is a member of Holland Climate Collaborative, and he's going to kind of just set some of the general background.
Don, you're on mute.
Thank you. So you're here tonight to learn about solar panels on your home. We know that. We know you wonder about the cost, about the savings, about choosing a contractor, about the experience of people who have done it already. We want you to get answers to all of your questions tonight. But first, we're going to take a few minutes to remind ourselves of the context for this discussion. By that, I mean, who cares about climate and carbon, and why? Next slide, please. For over 150 years, since the invention of the electric grid and the internal combustion engine, we've been burning fossil fuels to provide electricity for our homes and factories and fuel for our cars and trucks. As the pie chart on the left shows, fully half of the climate warming gases in our atmosphere today were put up there in just the past 30 years. And climate scientists around the world and locally here at Hope College or the University of Michigan, for example, tell us, as on the right of the slide, that for a 2 out of 3 chance to avert climate catastrophe for ourselves and our children, it requires that we now cut our emissions by half each decade going forward. Next slide. Fortunately, our community cares. Our business community cares about this crisis. There's something called SBTI. It's a worldwide program that certifies and tracks, quote, science-based targeted initiatives, unquote, hence the SBTI, by individual corporations around the world to cut their carbon emissions. The last time I looked, almost 2,500 businesses had signed on, including several from our local economy. For example, Steelcase, carbon neutral now, plans to be carbon negative by 2030. Kraft Heinz is on a trajectory to support limiting climate change to 2 degrees Celsius. General Motors has announced that they will be building only zero-emission cars by 2035. Next slide, please. The public sector here in Holland also cares about the climate crisis. Holland's newly revised community energy plan projects cutting our carbon emissions in half this decade, as shown on the graph on the left. The Holland Board of Public Works will be adding at least 30 megawatts of solar and eliminating coal altogether from its electricity production portfolio, all by 2030. Next slide. Yes, our community cares for one reason, because you and I care. We all know cutting our emissions is the right thing to do. Clean air is healthy air. Clean energy is our business edge. We have compassion for those less well off who are often victims of environmental injustice. We all enjoy outdoor living in our nature-rich community. Many of us see this as a way to honor our Creator. We know that caring for the climate benefits everyone. Next slide, please. Okay, the big picture, just quickly. Because we care, we want to act now. Big picture acting now has 4 parts. Next slide. Big picture number one, go solar so your electricity is clean. You can do this by investing in solar panels at your home. And if that doesn't work for you, you can invest with others in a community solar project. Or if none of that works, you can buy renewable energy credits to compensate for your use of electricity generated by our local utilities. Next slide, please. And if your electricity is clean, then go electric. When you are replacing heating and cooling equipment in your home, buy heat pumps. When you are replacing natural gas appliances in your home, buy electrical appliances. When you're replacing your gas and diesel fueled vehicles, buy electric vehicles. Next slide. So if you're going solar and you're electrifying everything, then use your clean electric energy efficiently. Buy Energy Star appliances, check your attic insulation, seal the air leaks in your home. Next slide. And finally, big picture 4, not everybody can do what you're thinking about doing. We need to advocate for others. Renters, for example, need community solar if they're going to get solar energy. Shaded houses need community solar. The Alice households, asset limited, income constrained, and employed, with 40% of our local population who can't afford through their employment to meet all of their needs. They certainly can't afford to make the investments in clean energy that some of us can. They need community support. And everyone needs a greener grid sooner. So join in the advocacy work that urges your local public officials to respond to these community needs. Next slide. So let's get on to the topic tonight, getting solar panels. Next slide. There are many reasons for choosing solar panels, just a few of them. They provide for an immediate response to the urgency of climate change. They improve efficiency by eliminating the energy losses inherent in long-distance transmission of electricity. They offer the resilience of battery storage if you choose that. And they offer the financial security of locking in your energy price and earning income after your return on investment period of, say, 9 to 13 years. Next slide. Now's a good time to be investing in solar panels. Over the last 10 years, production is up by a factor of 5 or 6. And as a result, price is about 10 times lower. Next slide. Now is also a good time to be investing in solar panels because there are strong financial incentives available now. You will be eligible for a 26% federal tax credit. Later tonight, we'll be announcing the details of the 15% group buy program, 15% discount group buy program with Helios. More on that in a minute. And if you live in the city of Holland itself, you may well qualify for up to a 20% rebate through the city's home energy retrofit program. Next slide. So many of you are wondering, so what typically is the situation? And so I'm going to offer a few comments on this from trusted sources. But first, let me remind you that nobody is typical. This won't be the exact situation for you. Remember the old slogan about Lake Wobegon, where all the children are above average. But nonetheless, typically in Michigan, a solar panel installation is in the range of 5 to 7 kilowatts. Typically in Michigan, the initial cost of the solar panel installation is about $3,000 per kilowatt before any incentives. typically with a payback of your initial investment over a range of, say, 10 to 13 years after tax credits, discounts, and rebates. And typically, solar panels have a 25-year warranty, but perform well for up to 40 years. On the right-hand side of this screen is a screen capture of a typical monthly bill from a friend of mine who has solar panels. If you squint, put your face up to the computer and look closely, you'll see that in November of 2020, his charge for electricity for the month from his utility was $73.88. But he earned a credit of $71.43 worth of electricity generated by his solar panels. And therefore, his net electric bill for November of 2020 was $2.45. Again, everybody's different. Next panel, please. So then what is the Solar Up Network Group Buy Discount Plan? Next slide. Here it is. You can read it for yourself. Holland Climate Collaborative and Helios have worked together to put forth this group buy discount plan for your consideration. There are 40 to 50 households on this Zoom call tonight. If 10 of those households sign a contract with Helios to install their solar panels by May 15, 2 months from now, everyone with contracts with Helios from this group will get a 15% discount. And so on. If perhaps only 7 of you wind up over the next 2 months with solar panel contracts with Helios, everyone with those contracts will get a 10% discount from Helios. And if, as it turns out, 5 of you are signing contracts with Helios by May 15, then all of 5 of you will get a 5% discount. Next slide. So how do you get started to explore this possibility further? Very simple. Send a simple email to the address on your screen, solarupnetwork@gmail.com, saying you'd like for Helios to contact you about your situation, offering you advice and giving you an estimate for a plan for solar panels at your residence. Again, a simple 1-sentence email to us at the email address on your screen. We will gather all of your input. We will coordinate between you and Helios to schedule a time for Helios to meet with you, discuss your needs, your constraints, what you want, and to give you an estimate. Next panel, please. With that estimate from Helios in hand, we're not telling you to sign their contract. You've heard from some folks who have worked with them, a recommendation to work with them. But you may, as a prudent decision maker, also want to get bids from other contractors. If you go to michigansaves.org, a nonprofit encouraging this kind of stuff, you'll find a list of other solar panel contractors in Michigan. If you want to talk to other solar panel users in the local area, we're putting together a list that will be more extensive than the hosts that you've met earlier tonight. We'd be happy to send it to you, and they would be happy to take a call from you to discuss their experience. If you'd like further discussion after tonight's meeting with one or more of the people you've heard making comments tonight, just ask us and we'll send you a list of the folks on the Zoom call tonight and their email address. Next slide, please. Enough from me. it's time for what you really signed up for, a chance to ask your questions and get answers. So I'm going to turn the screen back to our moderator, Peter Bogart.
Thank you, Don. Folks, you've heard a lot of material here tonight. A lot of philosophy, a certain amount of specifics. But I'm curious to hear from you. What questions do you need answered that would help you feel more comfortable with moving ahead with a solar project? Or if you've heard something from our hosts that you want to explore that further, then let's direct some questions to them too.
Okay, Dave Alexander, I think you're on.
I am a citizen of Taiwan, so I'm very interested, where are these panels manufactured?
So to give you an idea, we work with many different vendors for solar modules. Each project that comes to us comes with a set of homeowners' priorities. Some homeowners come to us and simply want the lowest cost system. For those people who opt for that, typically those modules are manufactured in Southeast Asia, typically in Vietnam or Malaysia. We try to avoid any modules that come from mainland China, even though those can be even cheaper still.
Thank you. You
However,
answered my question. Thank you.
Yep.
That's good.
So our modules are not coming from the Xinjiang region of China that is the subject of the Uyghur controversy. There is a significant concern in the solar industry about forced labor being used to manufacture those cells, and we avoid those at all cost. They're not a part of our supply chain. So I guess, I mean, I can continue on. I mean, sort of going up the chain from there, we have a line that comes from Singapore that's very high quality, made in a mostly autonomous factory there. And then when you get into the highest quality, more North American or domestically produced product, we have vendors that are entirely located in the US and others that do their manufacturing in the US and Canada. So to answer the question, we categorically eliminate certain product that we find to be unsavory for humanitarian reasons. And then we try to come up with the best mix of that meets our customers' objectives while still staying within their budget when it comes to specifying modules beyond that. So we're not a one-size-fits-all company that just tries to push one manufacturer to everybody. We try to listen to our customers, find out what their goals are, and tailor the system that's going to meet their goals while still being as cost-effective as possible.
Thank you.
Connor, this is Larry Dickey. Can you say a little bit more about the difference between the, say, lower and higher quality panels?
Yeah, for sure. So there's really, right now in the current industry, there's really two main differentiating characteristics. The first one is efficiency. So the higher cost modules tend to have a higher conversion efficiency per unit of area. So what that'll allow you to do is generate more energy using a smaller area of panels. Those are a great option if you have limited space or would like to limit the visual impact of the system. And then also in that sort of efficiency realm, there's kind of an aesthetic portion to this as well. So the sort of highest efficiency, highest quality panels tend to be made of a just monochromatic dark material that is as close to black as possible. That tends to be the best absorber because black is very absorbing. And also that tends to be the most aesthetically pleasing from a distance. Now, in addition to that efficiency and aesthetic differentiation, there's also a variety of different warranty terms that are offered by the manufacturers. So it's become quite industry standard for the production of the module to be warranted for 25 years. But all warranties are sort of not created equal in that way. So although the manufacturer may be warranting the output for 25 years, some manufacturers may use a baseline that says, well, we're going to linearly step down year by year to guarantee the module will still be at 80 or 85% efficiency. That would be at the lower end. And then at the higher end, the higher tier manufacturers guarantee that even after 25 years, the module will still produce at between 90 and 95% of its original output. The exact terms of that warranty depend on the manufacturer. The highest quality warranty is in that, low to mid 90s guarantee after 25 years. And then also there's some other warranty differentiation in that some manufacturers will cover the labor to potentially swap a panel if that ever needed to occur over 25 years, and some others do not. And so these are items that we address when it comes time to specify a module for a project, and they're great questions to be asking on a case-by-case basis. Yes, does that help there, Larry?
Connor, could you say something about microconverters? I mean, it's more than
Oh,
just,
yeah, sure.
it's more than just panels on the roof.
Yep, exactly. So for residential installations right now, we principally are working with Enphase Energy Electronics. So in addition to the panels that you typically see and associate with a solar installation, there also are other electronics that are involved. Namely, it's a product called an inverter that converts the DC power from the solar modules into usable AC power that matches what the utility is delivering and what our houses are designed to be powered by. So the product that Enphase Energy makes is what's called a microinverter. They're currently on their 8th generation of that product. It's the most advanced solid state inverter in the industry. They've been added in the microinverter game for multiple decades now. And so what their system architecture relies on is one microinverter per solar module or panel. The microinverter pairs with that panel. It converts the DC power to AC power at the panel level up on the roof. And it also has electronics built into it to track the output of each individual panel. This gets to be very important if there ever were to be a potential warranty claim for something that was malfunctioning. So Enphase's product line encompasses more than just those microinverters, though. They make a whole suite of support products for seamlessly installing those microinverters and integrating them with the electrical system in an existing home. And they also have what I believe to be the best in the industry online monitoring platform that they provide free of charge to their customers for the warranted life of the system. So they're essentially guaranteeing you'll have access to Enlighten, which is the name of their monitoring platform, or they call it the Enphase app on smartphones, that gives you sort of instant access to the vitals of your system, whether your system is performing as intended, whether it's healthy, and how various panels are performing compared to one another. I mean, that they've really emerged over the last few years as being really the great product in that regard. And they also built in with that microinverter technology is a lot of great safety aspects to it as well. So with the systems that rely on those microinverters, there's no DC voltage higher than about 40 or about 50 volts. It'll vary a little bit seasonally depending on temperature. But what that means is that there's dramatically lower risk of there potentially being a high voltage electrical problem connected with your home. And so their product is really proven to be very reliable, very safe. Has a great monitoring platform, 25-year warranty on the product. And we found that they're a great partner to work with on the electronic side of the system. By request, there are other vendors that we work with as well. I mean, I respect everybody's right to go online and determine which product they think may be best for their system. And that's why, similar to with the modules, we offer a whole host of various manufacturer solutions. But with that said, there are those that we recommend. So.
Peter, I just wanted to say that somebody had put a question there and Brandon answered it, but in case you didn't see it, Steve DeYoung asked, does Helios also do household battery backup installations? And Brandon's comment was, yes, we do that. And he also put a link in there for some information down in the chat box.
Yep. So Enphase, in addition to those microinverters and what it takes to install them, they also have a system that they call their ensemble system or their battery system. And their product is a little bit unique in that it's intended to be a whole home energy solution with one main controller that allows you to feed solar, battery, possibly a generator into it, and also have a number of advanced features as a part of that ecosystem of products, again, all tied into the app and controlled by the app. That, for example, it'll allow you to do things such as if the power goes out and it's the summer and you have limited battery backup, you can set points at which, say, your air conditioning compressor would be disabled. Like if your battery is 100% charged and you have solar available, blast away with the AC. But of course, you're going to want to be able to back up things like your refrigerator and your lights at night rather than cruising through all of your backup with AC. And so their system is intelligent enough and has the functional control to be able to allow you to set operating points so that you can have a very long duration backup that, in addition to giving you some luxuries as they're available, will also make sure that your essential loads are backed up for as long as possible.
Brandon, do I have to adjust or do anything to my electric panel to be able to hook up solar panels? Or, excuse me, Connor.
Hold on just a second.
Sorry, I just ran out of battery on my AirPods. Can everybody hear me?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
There we go. Now you can hear me again. Yeah, sorry about that. The headphone just ran out of battery. So typically for most solar installations, there's just minimal modification that's required to the electrical system in the home. Sort of going back to that previous slide of mentioning there is no typical necessarily. For larger installations or for homes that have say an older style of electrical panel, sometimes service upgrades are required. But for that sort of average typical size installation that was mentioned, that can generally be accommodated by any existing code compliant electrical system in a home. For smaller systems of that type, typically they just tie into the main electrical panel, similar to the way you would wire up an electric range. It's just the solar feeds in reverse. But with that said, there are certain times where in an older home or with an older electrical system, more extensive modification may be required, and that's really something that's addressed in the individual site inspection phase of our process. Generally, when we start looking at a project, the first run at that is sort of what can be fit on the property and the way the homeowner would like it to be there, based on space and usage matching. And then from there, we drill down and actually do a tight investigation of exactly what's at the home so that all potential concerns are addressed up front as the project is developed.
So Connor, this is Larry again. It might be worth letting people know that if they have solar panels, but no battery backup, that when power goes out, they do not have electricity, that you can't just run your house off your solar panels.
Right, that's correct. So this, I think this is a good opportunity to expound on an important part of the differences between types of solar energy installations. So the most basic type of installation is what's referred to as a grid connected system. What that means is that the system requires the home to remain connected to the electric grid in order to operate. And essentially what happens is that when sun shines on the solar modules, energy is generated. It'll flow into loads in the house, and any excess will flow back to the utility grid for a credit. But if the power were to go out, because there's nothing physically isolating that generating source from the grid, if the grid power goes out, the solar also has to shut down. And the reason for that, it's for safety for the utility lineman. So if you were to still, without means of disconnect from the utility, continue to produce energy, it could potentially be hazardous for utility workers. And so that's why I say that's the most basic type of installation. As you go up one step in complexity from there, if you add an automatic transfer switch into the mix, there are models of those microinverters that can form a utility grid for limited backup when the sun is shining on them. And so adding complexity, you add that transfer switch, then what will happen is when the grid goes out, if there's sun on the panels, you'll have whatever power is available from the system in that circumstance. Now, adding another layer of complexity, if you also add battery storage to the mix, then you'll be able to provide power loads from the house using solar or batteries during the day, or the batteries at night, or when there's otherwise no solar resource available. And so those are really the three categories of systems we commonly build at this point. Those would be grid connected, sunlight backup would be the second, and then full battery storage would be the third. And that battery storage type of installation can be a gradient of capacities of storage. Starting with a small amount of storage, you can back up essentials like a refrigerator and some lights for a period of time. Or if you'd like to be able to back up, a whole home or heavy loads, then you'll add battery modules, sort of commensurate with the amount of storage that you would like to have.
And if I feel like my finances are limited, is it possible to start with solar and then add to it later?
For sure. So we typically, with our installations, like to make a plan for now that is a plan for later. So many of our customers, when they come to us, they may have an idea of the total amount of solar capacity they'd like to have at some point in the future. And so what we'll do is we'll design the system for what they can afford, or we'll build the system for them now based on what they can afford. But as a portion of that, upfront, we'll put in all of the electrical infrastructure that would be required in order to allow their maximum size system to be built. And so down the road, it would simply be a matter of adding on the additional panels, as opposed to us having to go digging back into the electric system in their house. Would just be a question of if it's a ground mount, tagging on additional panels at the ground array, or if it's a roof mount, maybe adding another subarray or another row of panels on the existing array or something like that, as long as space allows. Where we frequently see this is we have many customers who contemplate wanting to purchase an electric car at some point in the future. And so they're sort of thinking for now, thinking for later, and that they want to be able to add another 3 to 5 kilowatts of capacity onto their system easily in the future when they get their car. And so we'll build out the infrastructure for the system to accommodate that, based on what those long-term goals are. So we've done a wide variety of different sort of staging and phasings of projects. The two households that you heard from this evening had both built their projects in 2 separate phases as their usage changed over time and as budget allowed. But we've had quite a few customers who have adopted a similar model. Maybe it's putting in all the underground infrastructure for a larger ground array and then building half of it, or just deciding to use one roof area or one small area at the beginning, with the plan that we will build that which needs to be there to easily accommodate expansion in the future.
Peter, I wanted to say something that tomorrow is the Holland Energy Fund meeting, the quarterly meeting, and it's about they'll be talking about the home energy retrofit program and some of the updates to it. So that's coming up real soon. And solar is one of the qualifying components that's being recommended for the update of the new program, or the way the program is going to look after, I think it'll be after July 1st. So there'll be an update on that after tomorrow's meeting, the Holland Energy Fund, which I think Nikki is at City Hall, if I'm not mistaken. Probably upstairs at City Hall.
Upstairs. Unmute, Grandma. Yes, it's upstairs.
Okay, great.
Floor,
At 4 o'clock. So.
Yeah, 4 o'clock.
Tanya, do solar panels require any maintenance on my part over the years?
So typically the main recommended maintenance that we have is to keep an eye on that monitoring platform. That's really the best way to stay in touch with the system and make sure that everything's operating in a healthy manner over the long run. For certain types of installations, it may make sense to remove dust from the system periodically. That's more typical for systems that are flatter, because those will tend to accumulate dust on the surface of the modules more readily. And then in that case, it's just clean water and a soft type brush to wash those off. I've seen people rig up various things for doing that, sort of like a soft mop type device on a long painting stick or something like that for a roof array, or for a ground mount. It's a little bit more accessible, but in general, very little maintenance is required other than just making sure that all of the components are behaving as is the expectation. And with that said, in that monitoring app, if there is an issue that you discover before we're alerted to, on our end, bring that to our attention, and we'll diagnose what the issue is. And if it's a piece of equipment that needs to be swapped, take care of it. But really, other than that, it's really just a matter of keeping an eye on the system. Solar installations are intended to end up being almost a thought-free portion of the infrastructure of your house. In a similar way to, there isn't necessarily a maintenance protocol other than potential cleaning for the windows on your home. It's similar with the solar installation, that it's intended to become a fixed portion of the home that requires very little thought or action in order to keep in good working order.
Here, Rhonda has a question. Rhonda, go ahead.
This is Rhonda. No, this is actually Mark, her husband.
Mark.
I am wondering about if there are any kind of solutions to prevent snow buildup. So to somehow use a little bit of heat or something to keep them clear, keep solar panels clear.
Yeah, sure. So this is an excellent question that we get all the time, especially this time of year when there's more prone to being snow coverage. So to kind of put a point on exactly what we're talking about with snow cover, if you were to take a typical solar array in this area and keep it completely free of snow year round, and then sort of say that is 100% of the potential output. If you were to just let nature take its course with snow accumulating and dissipating and accumulating and dissipating as the weather occurs, you're going to be losing less than 10% of what the annual output of the system would be. The reason why I like to lead with that is because although there is energy lost from snow, if you were to take the worst case scenario of it just is covered for the entire winter, you're potentially only losing that less than 10%. And so then the question gets to be, well, if we want to try to optimize beyond that by removing snow from the panels, for ground mounts, we'll have folks who occasionally will use a broom or something to just break the snow free so it tends to slide off. Roof mounts, we typically don't recommend that because it can be quite dangerous to do so. But to answer your specific question about adding some heating to it, because the gain in energy production due to the generally poor season for solar resource due to the angle of the sun and clouds is low, any heating to remove that snow, you'd end up going backwards in terms of the net energy you were getting. It would take more energy to remove the snow from the panels with electric heating than you would net by having removed it and generated the additional output. So with all of the modeling that we do with our solar installations, we're making the assumption that nature is just going to take its course. So when we project the output, there are snow losses that are characteristic to the type of system being installed that are built into that modeling.
There was a question Adrian had about combining the individual, the discounts from federal tax credit, the city, tonight's group, and yes, those can be combined. And Brandon, do you want to answer that question since you answered it in the chat? Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, for sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, so the federal investment tax credit is entirely separate. It's something that obviously homeowners deal with themselves and their tax preparer or the IRS individually. That is, can be combined with the group discounts that are offered through the Solar Up Network in tonight's meeting. And perhaps Ken or Peter or anyone else who's familiar with the city program, as I'm not as familiar with it myself, I don't entirely know. And I know you mentioned as well that solar is on the docket as well. So maybe that's something that's more forthcoming. But I would imagine that any incentives offered through the city would be able to be combined with all of these types of discounts.
Yes, and I can answer that. Yes, the city discount can also be used, or the rebate or grant program, and it will be required. I'm reading what the agenda item says for tomorrow. It says solar qualifies, but home air sealing or proof of home that the proof that the home has been sealed is the one requirement. There were a lot of other requirements before to get some of those grants. This one, you could do solar, but you have to do the air sealing at the same time. And to let you know that the air sealing of a home, when I was running the program, we calculated it was about, I think the average was about $2,800, maybe $3,200 to do air sealing, so spray foam or some kind of air sealing, and that was both attic and that was basement, also the rim joists and some other areas. So that is not really cost prohibitive, and it's very, very effective as far as leakage and making the home more comfortable.
So sort of consistent with what you're saying there, that actually is a recommendation that we typically make prior to sizing a solar installation, is for folks to go through the process of having an energy audit done and doing that which they can to reduce consumption before potentially putting in an oversized solar installation. Because one thing that I will note is with the interaction with essentially all of the utilities in the state, if you produce more energy than what you consume annually, that ends up essentially just being given to the utility. So you would definitely want to do things in the order of reducing your consumption to the minimum of what it would possibly be, and then sizing the installation accordingly. Because if you were to build a solar installation based on baseline usage, and then we're able to reduce your use by 20%, you will have essentially just overbuilt the solar installation. So I think it's a great point, and that actually is really a good thing that Holland's doing. By, if they're going to provide some subsidy for solar, it makes sense to have it be tied to an efficiency program as well.
Okay.
So just-
Lori asked a question, and I think Brandon answered it, but do you assess the productivity and optimization of existing arrays regardless of who installed it initially? And then Brandon answered that with, we are happy to help with you with an energy audit and your existing system if the previous installer is unable or willing to do so.
Yeah, and Ken, you can tell me if you want me to stop answering those questions on the sidebar, if you prefer myself or Connor to answer them here.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to reiterate in
Okay.
case somebody didn't see it in there too. So.
Okay, perfect.
I'd like to just jump in to go back to the previous question a minute before we just go by it completely. What this means, correct me if I'm wrong, is that if we together earn a 15% discount from the Helios estimate and do a few $1,000s worth of sealing on our home, we earn an additional up to 20% from the home energy retrofit program. So if my arithmetic is right, that's 35% off the initial estimate. And the following year, we get to claim a 26% tax credit on top of that. Am I hearing all of that right?
So that's very close. The only one thing that I would note is that the 26% tax credit, it's 26% of what the actual cash outlay for the system was. So rather than being additive, they're fractionally multiplicative. Just from the federal government's perspective, they're going to allow you to take 26% on what your actual cash outlay was, as opposed to what the top line would have been had that not been in place. I just wanted to make that clear for full transparency here.
Great.
So
Adrian, I
in
think you
round
have a
numbers,
question.
that comes out to about 50%. I mean,
Okay.
after we back off the credit before filing for the federal tax.
Adrian, you have a question?
Yeah, we did the energy audit on and retrofit on our home. And then I remember that if we move, that loan stays with the home. Is that also true with the city program and solar?
Yes, it would be. And if it is a loan through the BPW, their mechanism, then yes, it does stay with the home. Most of those, I don't think we had any that stayed with the home during the sale. The people said, hey, there's a loan on it, this can stay with the house. And the people buying it said, no, I don't think so. So the people ended up just selling the home, paying it off, and going on from there. So yes, technically it can go with the house, but in the few sales that we had in that time frame, it didn't stay with, it just got paid off.
And it would be worth pointing out to folks on the call here that if you do live within the city of Holland, you do have a second finance option. If we're operating in the home energy retrofit program, there is the on-bill loan program, which allows you to borrow the money for the project and pay it back as a new line item on your electric bill.
Yes, and that rate, I'm not sure of the exact rate, and maybe Nikki, I don't know if you know it off the top of your head, but it was 4.99 and 5.99 before were the rates, depending on the number of years. And then Michigan Saves is the other organization we mentioned, and they do have a loan program also, and their threshold is lower for a loan. It's not on bill, so it's not something that would just go on your utility bill, but that is available. And I think their rate is around 3.99. It might be even 2.99. But again, you have to check that with Michigan Saves to verify that.
Another thing I'd mention is that Michigan Saves has some additional new financing products that we found to be highly attractive, especially for our younger customer base. They're actually offering a solar financing loan with a 25-year amortization period. The result of that is that the payment on the loan is markedly lower than what the energy savings are. So it's a cash flow positive, immediate decision to add solar using that financing product. Now, of course, with a longer amortization period, the total cost of financing over time will be a bit greater, but from a cash affordability perspective, it creates accessibility for a portion of the market that may not have been able to budgetarily make things work if it was going to be a negative cash flow event. I do want to point that out, that they have that 25-year product. It's brand new. We're one of the only contractors in the state that has access to it, and we found it to be quite popular so far.
And I will say that there are other financial packages available for people who may need assistance. So there are, for lower income households, there are community development block grant dollars or CDBG funds that are available also. Again, you need to qualify for that. And there's a process, and Mark is on here. And if Mark wants to say anything about that too, but those are additional funds for income qualified households. And I know that we were able to use that with a number of households and reduce people's amount of an energy retrofit down to a very doable amount, and then be able to help them finance it over a period of time. It brought their monthly payment down to something that was very affordable. Mark, I don't know if you want to say anything about that.
No, I think you nailed it, Ken. You got it right.
Okay.
It is, yeah, it's restricted to City of Holland, owner occupied, income eligible. But the income thresholds are probably a bit higher than what most people might surmise.
Good, thank you.
We haven't spoken about, and I know we have at least one builder on this call or on this Zoom, about new construction. So the way that you've dealt with installing when there's already a house there, you have to produce the electrical bill, and then Connor, you calculate what that would be. Do you work with new construction at all?
Yeah, so we've found just in the last couple of years that there's gotten to be a great deal of interest from folks who are building new homes and having the home designed around the notion of either having solar be there to produce part of their energy on site, or we were also heavily active in the net zero energy home market right now, which are homes that are specifically designed to be ultra high efficiency, all electric, and have on net over the course of the year all their energy derived from on-site solar. So we've worked with a variety of builders on that. There's sort of varying qualities of energy estimates that can be produced. So everything from at the simpler end, that would just essentially be totaling up the types of loads that are going to be in the house and the typical hours a day that those are going to be used, and then you can make a projection as to what the annual energy use is going to be based on how the house is equipped and the size of the house and heating source, cooking fuel source, that kind of thing. That can generally be estimated fairly accurately. Now, on those homes that are the net zero energy homes, if there's significant energy engineering and design already going into the home, something that drops out of that is typically an estimate of what the amount of energy that's going to be used by the home is. So those are really those very sort of detailed bankable estimates can be a little bit easier to work from, but it is possible even with a fairly common type of new build, maybe with a builder who isn't experienced with net zero energy or ultra high efficiency, we can, based on the characteristics of the home, come up with an estimate that will be acceptable by most of the utilities. I will note that Holland in particular, they do not allow a system to be sized based on projections of consumption. They will only allow you to install capacity based on demonstrated use. And so, you know, for example, if somebody purchases an electric car, they wouldn't be able to size that into their solar estimate until 12 months of consumption had elapsed. So this is, as we get into kind of the nitty gritty of how the various utility operators function with these programs, some of these answers can be different across programs, but in general, it is possible to, with new construction, to come up with an estimate that's reliable enough to size an installation off of it.
As we approach 8:30, we said initially that this might be an hour, but we'd stay as long as you would like. And I'm sure that anybody who wants to stay on and continue to ask more questions is certainly welcome to do so. But just by way of saying, so where are we now? Offer a few comments. There are city and government officials from the city of Holland, from Saugatuck Township, from Park Township, at least that I know, who are participating in this call. And that suggests that it might be good in the future to get some of those government officials together and work through some of these issues of regulation, such as Connor was just citing now. More importantly, for individual homeowners who joined us tonight to get some information and further their thinking, the only step you need to do now to follow up, and it's a no obligation step, is to send an email to solarupnetwork, all one word, solarupnetwork.gmail.com, solarupnetwork@gmail.com. We will be sending you an email in the near future reminding you of that email address and giving you a link to the recording of this event tonight, so you can check back on some things that you were wondering about as you thought about it. And as you let us know that you would be interested in following up with Connor and Helios to get further discussion and estimates based on your particular situation, we will coordinate all that. That's one of the reasons that Helios is willing to offer a discount. We can gather some of the information and facilitate the contact. So please, if you have any questions or any interest in following up with Helios and Connor, send us an email. We'll chase down some of the basic information that they need to respond to you initially and put them in touch with you. And we're all eager to see our group buy discount come into being. So,
Don, I would like to add to the one of the questions in there was, how do I kind of get started if I want to do something in the city of Holland? And please send us again an email at that address, and we'll get you connected with Dan Broersma and the City of Holland's program, the Home Energy Retrofit Program. So we can, and again, we are not running these programs, but we just want to make sure we can kind of keep track of what's coming in and how we can help Helios streamline their process. And the same thing with Dan Broersma. If we can bring someone to Dan, to the City of Holland, and be able to help answer some of those questions, we will do that. I also just wanted to say that Lori had asked about what do you do with older solar panels? And Brandon answered that it can be recycled. Is that something you take care of the recycling, Connor or Brandon, or a homeowner can do that? What is the process there?
Okay, yeah, sure. So as mentioned earlier in this program, it's contemplated that a typical solar module will maintain its integrity to operate for a period of close to 40 years. Obviously, that's a non-infinite time horizon, but it's a very long time horizon. So the components that make up a solar module are limited to the frame of the module is a piece of aluminum. There's a piece of glass that's the top sheet. The solar cells themselves are made of purified silicon with some very trace non-hazardous element materials added to them to make them active as solar cells. And then there's a very small amount of a polymer material that's a film on the back of the cell. So the modules themselves, if you were to remove the aluminum frame and grind up what was left, you'd have a very trace quantity of polymer material, and the rest of the material would essentially just return to sand. So purified silicon comes from silicon dioxide, which is sand, and will return to that very quickly when it's returned to the environment. And so that's the sort of end of use for solar modules. And so of our installations that we've put in, our oldest installations are over 12 years old at this point. We have not yet had somebody who's come to us and wanting to have those modules removed and replaced with others, because the most cost-effective module to have is the one that's already been paid for. And so it's anticipated that solar installations, once they go in, will stay for the life cycle of those modules, and it'll be sort of an end of life cycle type of situation. And at that point, the aluminum from the frames is scrapped, and the scrap value of that aluminum is greater than what it costs to recycle the rest of the material in bulk. And there's national organizations like PV Cycle that deal with this exact topic. It's not as if the panels would just get taken down and all stacked up in a landfill, because there's significant commodity value to be recovered there. In that process of grinding things up, you can even recover a fairly significant amount of silver. So there's commodity value in those modules to be recovered that it's generally regarded that will be of greater value when done at scale than what it costs to actually do the reprocessing.
Okay, well, on behalf of Holland Climate Collaborative, I want to say thank you to everyone who was with us on the call tonight. Our interest is in our name, climate change. And we just believe a serious uptake of solar panels is something that would really help to mitigate our climate change problem. It's something individually some of us can do. As a collaborative, we said to Connor, we'll be your unpaid administrative assistant. That's kind of our contribution to climate change. If we can take the burden off some of his time to facilitate the whole process. Obviously, Connor's ready to go and wants to hear from you, so we hope we hear from you. So thank you all so much for being here tonight.
Thank you, Peter, for continuing to do this.
And I would like to say thank you to everybody for being here and listening to me, sometimes rambling on about some of these topics, but they're your questions that really make this type of event the most valuable for everyone involved. And would just like to thank you for that, as well as thank you to our hosts for putting this together. Really couldn't be more excited to be able to be a part of this program. And I'm really looking forward to, as a group, being able to do great things for you folks.
And I'd like to add a thank you to Ann Arbor also for helping guide us through this process. Their program has been going for about 2 years, and they've have approximately 200 homes are either installed or signed up for installation over the last 2 years. So, and also Julie and her team in Ann Arbor for answering our questions, giving us a framework to work from. So this has been very, very helpful. So again, a thank you to Ann Arbor for helping us out.
Yes, Ann Arbor has been doing this for 2 or 3 years, about one such session a month, and they have never failed to get the minimum 10 people to proceed.
Yeah.
We can do better than Ann Arbor. Come on. Okay.
So,
Any last words from anybody? Okay, I'm going to bang the gavel then. Thank you all so much for spending time with us tonight.
Thank you, everyone.
thanks.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Ken and Don, you want to stay on for a minute?
Yeah,
Sure.
fine.
And Steve? I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Steve, you're looking for Steve DeYoung?
That's what I was thinking. I saw the name on the screen.
Yeah, I walked away, sorry.
Okay. Oh, those guys, I know them. Yeah. That's, you know, so let's see here. We got one other person I don't recognize. Oh, there he goes. Okay. Any initial feedback, guys?
Extremely well done. I mean, it rolled along very nicely. Everything was, I think, pretty smooth, and great questions and great answers also. I will say that was just Connor and Brendan did a great job.
We're still alive.
Yeah.
So Ken, I heard you, I believe, say in regards to the city rebate, something about starting July 1. That concerned me a little bit for, this group in terms of signing up, et cetera. What do you know or not know about that?
Well, people can qualify now, but the current program is $10,000 of, starting at 10,000, and you have to, and it still says that you have to have an energy retrofit. You have to prove that you've reached a certain level of efficiency. And the new program is going to be, you don't have to prove that, but you do have to prove that you've done the air sealing before you can do solar. You can do heat pumps. Matter of fact, I'll just read you what it says right on here. The things that qualify are heat pump, on-demand water heaters, home sealing, insulation, solar with the air sealing. And it does say a full home energy audit also, which they're still going to be working with the contractors on those audits. So those are the things that are going to qualify for it says 5 to 20% paid only to the contractors, but Dan says it's going to be probably the 20% is going to stay.
But I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't sound like this group of people, if they have to commit by May 15, are going to be eligible for that money.
Well, I think that we probably can work with Dan to say that if they sign a contract, can we roll it at the July 1st moment or something? I think they'll be flexible enough with it if people are willing to do that, but we'll have to roll with what we have at the moment. So
right. Well, we'll have to let people know, or at least Helios know, so they can inform people and et cetera. So
right. Well, I'm glad that Nikki was on, and I'm planning on attending the Holland Energy Fund meeting tomorrow at 4. So, at least Nikki can also say something about this group that was on tonight, and that there are people interested. So maybe there may be some opportunity to adjust that a little bit or be a little bit flexible with it.
Yeah, I'd love to be standing in front of the city council in a month saying we've got 5 contracts from City of Holland, and wouldn't it be a shame if you guys don't give them the opportunity to participate?
Yeah, I agree.
Ken, do you have a list of who was actually on the Zoom meeting tonight?
Yes, I do. I printed off a full list and I checked off everybody that was on there. So I do have that full list, and we had 34 people on total. There were 16 people that were signed up that didn't attend.
So we'll need to share that list in the days ahead so we can do some follow-up mailing to them and so forth.
Yeah, I've got it in a spreadsheet, and I'll just highlight the ones that didn't attend.
I know I saw 39 people at one point. So there were some people who were on, and there were some people who came on really late too. Like Ross Havman came on really late.
Well, he came on kind of a little bit earlier, and then he went off and came back on again.
Okay.
So
Okay.
he was in and out. But I was glad that Ross is there again. Hi, Ross. Are you back?
Okay.
Well,
about the rest of our city council members? Belinda and Lynn.
Lynn was on. It was under Larry Helder. It was under her husband's name. And Jay was not on, and I didn't see Belinda come on.
Okay.
So Nikki and Lynn, essentially.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, but Nikki's on the Home Energy Fund board, right?
Correct.
And
Lynn's a customer too, right? Possible customer.
Possible. Yeah. She came to the open house that was several months ago, and she was asking a lot of questions about it. So she's starting to get on that track. And actually, and Belinda has already gone through the home energy retrofit program. And she took advantage of financing, CDBG funds, the grant, the rebates. So she's a good proponent of the program.
we had, I'm having a senior moment, his name is escaping me, but the man who was on the Saugatuck Township Board.
Yep, John Helmrich. Yeah.
That's right. And then Skip Keeter, who's on the Park Township Board, was signed up. I don't know if he was actually on
I
tonight.
didn't see Skip on there at all. Yeah, I was trying to think of anyone else that, nope, that was, I didn't see Skip on there.
Well, then we can provide a link to everyone who signed up who at all, so that if they miss it tonight, they can still watch it.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I'm going to stop the recording. We don't need to for this part. But I don't